The main concern is that because AI enables the weapon to operate entirely without human supervision, that means that one person can push a button and launch perhaps 1 million weapons at once and wipe out an entire population.
It is certainly the most disruptive tech development of our times, and potentially, at its worst, a threat to humanity. On Monday, world leaders, tech bosses and AI experts will meet in Paris for a huge summit on the future of AI. We're joined from there by Stuart Russell, who wrote the textbook on AI and will be at the summit. Welcome to Newsnight, Professor Russell.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Great to have you. This week, Google dropped its previous commitment not to use AI-powered weapons and surveillance systems. What's your reaction to that, first of all?
I think it's an interesting decision. The history of this is that Google participated in a defense project called Project Maven back in 2017. And that was at least ostensibly about using AI for surveillance, which sounds fairly harmless, but the employees of Google were worried that the same technology would be used in autonomous weapons, because if you can do AI for reconnaissance and recognize a target, you can also then shoot the target. And that employee revolt led Google to actually pull out of the project and then install this policy which said Google products will not be used for autonomous weapons. And so you might ask, well, why are they undoing that policy? And I'm sure that the fact that the Trump administration is now in power has something to do with it. The market for this kind of software is not going to be very big compared to Google's consumer market or its business market. So I don't think they're making this decision in order to make lots of money from autonomous weapons. I think they're making this decision to curry favor with the administration. And you might say, well, why do they need to do that? And I think the reason is that a court has found that they were running an illegal monopoly and is proposing to break them up as a remedy.
Why would it be that they would change it based on the Donald Trump administration?
Because they feel that this would be a change that would appeal to the Trump administration. They might, had a different administration been elected, they might have chosen something different as a way of currying favor. But they presumably felt that this was the kind of change they could make that would signal their support for the administration and its views.
Okay, and you're talking there about autonomous weapons systems. I guess most people, when they think about AI, they might think about its possibilities of revolutionizing the economy, or perhaps more simply a good way to cheat at homework potentially. But for you, what does keep you awake at night about AI? Is it this?
Well, so I think you make a good point. Most people right now, when they think about AI, they do think about good things like medical diagnosis, having something to play chess with. And we, the AI community, don't want the death of human beings to be the first thing that comes to mind when you think about AI. So there are at least two different threads going on with respect to the use of AI in weapons. So one is conventional weapons, and those are being discussed in Geneva amongst most of the countries in the world. And there, the main concern is that because AI enables the weapon to operate entirely without human supervision, that means that one person can push a button and launch perhaps 1 million weapons at once and wipe out an entire population. So we don't think that's a good idea, but that seems to be the direction that things are going right now. The discussions in Geneva have not made a lot of progress. There are major powers, including the US and Russia, surprisingly collaborating on preventing any discussion about banning these kinds of weapons.
But you've just given us a horrific scenario there. How likely do you think that would be?
To be honest, I think it's it's very likely because what we're seeing in Ukraine in particular, which is sort of a crucible for technological advancement in these kinds of weapons, is that the weapons are becoming more and more autonomous because of electronic countermeasures. So it used to be that both sides were killing each other using remotely piloted drones, which require a radio link so that the operator can see through the camera. But then with jamming, those links are starting to become impossible. And so if you want your weapon to do something useful, you have to make it fully autonomous. And that's already happened.
Okay, and you wrote a paper recently that said, left unchecked, powerful AI systems may pose an existential threat to the future of humanity. Can you give us any kind of timeline on that?
So that's a separate issue, and I want to be very clear on that. The kinds of AI that are being proposed for weapons can actually be very simple. It's a lot easier to do a weapon than to do a self-driving car, for example, which Google is already doing in San Francisco. The kinds of AI that we're talking about that present an existential threat are quite simply AI systems that are far more intelligent than human beings. And there's a long record of more intelligent species, for example, us, wiping out less intelligent species, such as dodos and the roughly 1 million other species that we put out of business. And so if we create systems that are far more intelligent than us, and we haven't figured out how to control them forever, then we're going to be in big trouble. And this is a view that is now pretty much a consensus among leading AI researchers in academia, among the CEOs of the companies who are building it.
And it is a worrying scenario. The other worrying scenario, of course, and it plays into all of this, is people's fears around their jobs. And I wonder, for people watching tonight who might be worried about that, do you have any sense, as a sort of expert in AI, do you have any sense of which professions you might be protected in and which professions are the ones that will go?
It's a really interesting question. It's sort of a moving target. We used to think that, the creative professions, of course, those are going to be around forever. But, with the advent of generative AI that can write an entire book in the style of James Bond in 10 seconds, that can churn out commercial quality art by the thousand, that can write music that can reach the top of the charts. Clearly, the creative professions are under threat. And we saw the Hollywood writers go on strike for a long time, basically insisting that AI not be used in writing scripts, and the actors didn't want AI systems basically impersonating them and taking their livelihoods away as a result. So it's really hard to point to any except possibly politicians, because they're the ones who write the rules, and they're not going to allow themselves to be replaced.
OK, so we all need to be politicians, potentially, if we can. OK, thank you so much. Very useful information there from you, and also obviously worrying. Stuart Russell, thank you very much for coming on Newsnight.
Thanks, my pleasure.